Hello, ladies and gentlemen, what is going on? Welcome back to Force Strategy Gaming. And today, well, we're going to be looking at this week's Protoss strategy. And I know this was a wee bit late, and I apologize for that. It was supposed to come out yesterday, but instead it's coming out today. Just some personal things that took place yesterday. Wasn't able to come out with the content, unfortunately, like I'd hoped to. So as a result, yes, this is a little bit delayed, but either way, let's take one quick look here. The player that we're going to be focusing on here is TT1, and the opponent will be X-Lord. So what we're going to do is go right into TT1 vision. Now, what we want to focus on is scouting and the build. Now, the specific build that we're actually going to be seeing from TT1 this game is he's going to start off with a Forge Fast Expand and then move into getting a Robo, but eventually getting a 7-gate and going for a very, very strong, aggressive 7-gate push. And we want to look at how he does it and why he does it and everything of the sort. So you can see scouting 2 times already. We're about 240 into the game. There's no pool. There's no extractor. At this point, you know, TT1 is pretty much expecting some sort of fast expand. So we're going to be following down that worker. Already knows the expansion is down, and we can see, of course, that pool dropped after. But very important part, very important aspect to everything that's going on. Checking the gas again, and look at that. I'm going to pause really quickly here. We're about 340 into the game. The extractor is just about 50% of the way finished, so that's quite a bit late. And the reason I'm mentioning this, and the reason that we're going to be focusing on this, is because what we see here is going to actually determine what TT1 ends up doing in terms of his build order, in terms of what his plan is for the game. So like I said, Forge Fast Expand, that's what we're seeing from TT1. So let's take a look back in his base. We can see the Forge is up, first cannon making its way on out, and then we have the Nexus coming on through. And then everything else is pretty much a standard. He's just droning out, going first probes, you know, nothing too unorthodox. But what we're really going to focus on is that after this point, he's going to macro super hard, super heavy, meaning he's working on his upgrades and his economy, but not his army. Early game, he pretty much lacks anything resembling an army. And the question is going to be why? What if his opponent here, what if X-Lord pushed out super aggressive very early on? The thing is, through scouting, seeing this extractor as late as it is, again, about halfway finished at the 340 timer mark, it tells him that there's not going to be super crazy aggression, all right? The metabolic boost is going to be, well, it's going to be relatively late. If he goes for roaches, those are going to be a little late too because his gas is so late. So seeing this late gas, seeing that hatchery and that pool come up way before that extractor gets dropped down, that told TT1, I am pretty safe for quite some time. So we're going to pick it right back up. He knows at this point the extractor is coming through. Trying to keep an eye on that expansion as much as possible is a good idea. You would, of course, want to check for some sort of a cancellation, so it doesn't hurt to go back for an additional scout, clearly. He is also, at this point, going to be checking for that the possibility of a third. That's not the worst idea as well. Not very likely to happen, but might as well keep your eyes out for that. So we can see right now, okay, good. He goes for that extra scouting, sees that the hatchery is up. So at this point, he knows he is pretty safe for a while. There's not going to be a lot of early game aggression. He was also checking for that roach warren in that secondary push. So why I mention this is because at this point right now, what we're going to see here is TT1 is just going to probe up very, very hard. That is it. That's all he's really concerned about doing. He knows that there's not going to be a lot of aggressive motion from his opponent at any early stage in the game. So we're actually going to see him go for the level 1 upgrades before he gets down any additional gateways, or before he even gets down his robotics. And that might sound pretty crazy, and we're going to actually slow it on down just for a moment here. In maybe typical gameplay, that might sound a little crazy because your question would be, again, what if a push happened? Well, he will be getting sentries to utilize force fields if for some crazy reason a push did happen. But based on his consistent scouting, he saw nothing that indicated to him that there was going to be aggressive play from his opponent. Again, that extractor was super late. He went hatch first before pool. He knew Zerglings were going to be out later. He knew roaches, any sort of roach push would be very, very late given that extractor timing. And that's the kind of stuff you want to focus on. And again, we saw that secondary scouting just to confirm that the hatchery actually did come up and go through. So working out with sentries, will be your best opening game unit. Those force fields will help quite a bit, and also they're not terrible against roaches either, and they can do pretty well against Zerglings, of course, especially behind this wall off. Something else to note as well, TT1 going for that full wall off. leaving no space for any units, and then he'll just kill off a building once he decides to push out. Now, in terms of the build order that we're looking at, the build order that TT1 opted to go for in this game, remember, things change, and his decisions were dependent on his scouting information. But what he started off with was just the typical forge, the expansion, and the cannon, and then everything beyond that point was based on his scouting. His ability to go for that level 1 upgrade first, his ability to even drop that Robo was determinant on what he had scouted out. Had he scouted something that looked like early aggression, he would have got his additional gateways faster, and he probably wouldn't have gone straight for that Robo either. But now that he's allowed to get that, now that he has enough time, of course, getting that observer, moving out with the scouting, and seeing if a push is coming, and then continuing from there. But let's pause momentarily, and let's take a look at the build order. So he started off here with a 9 Pylon, 15 Forge, 17 Nexus, and 17 Cannon. That was his opening. That was going to happen basically no matter what. Then, after that point, that's when he scouted. The extractor was late. He scouted and made sure that the hatchery was up, and everything took place after that. Of course, as soon as the gateway finished, that is when that Cybernetics Core came down at 27 supply, because the gateway actually got dropped after the cannon at 17. The gateway got dropped in 19. And then there were 2 Assimilators at 21 here. Start working on that gas. 27 supplies when the Cybernetics Core finishes. Then a 3rd Assimilator at the expansion. As soon as the Cybernetics Core finishes, of course, starting the Warp Gate research, also getting that level 1 upgrade, and that came at about 41 supply, and realized most of all of this, with the exception of a couple sentries and the Zealot continuously being produced at the beginning of the game, most of all that is workers. Like TT1 scouted not a lot of early aggression. He decided, I can work really hard on my economy, and that'll put me in a good spot. So level 1 upgrade was about 41, 48 supply is when that Robo came out, and then at 56 supply, well, roughly, that is when he dropped the 6 additional gateways. The decision in doing something like this is that, hey, you know what, hey, I am not going to go straight for a 3rd, I am going to be very, very aggressive, because he's going to be sitting at a total of 7 warp gates, and that is quite a lot, and that allows you a great opportunity to be super, super aggressive. So that was the build order. Again, remember, the opening, it was going to happen no matter what. The opening was 9 Pylon, 15 Forge, 17 Nexus, 17 Cannon. That was the opening, no matter what happened, essentially. He scouted out that there wasn't going to be a lot of aggression. I know I've said this like 10 times already, but I just kind of want to reiterate the fact. And that's what determined, that's what made him realize that, hey, I can work really hard on my probe count. I can start getting my level 1 upgrades super early. You can see then the level 1 upgrades for the armors coming out. And what he will do at this point is, with the 7 gateways, the level 1 weapons already finished, he will push out with a level 1 armor upgrade timing attack. So we're going to see him leave his base with a few units. He's going to refinish that wall off for that full block, so it doesn't have to deal with any Zergling run-bys, bringing at least 1 probe outside with you. That way you can drop proxy pylons, and then you just move out with the push. And this push will be so very, very, very strong. And it's definitely something that, you know, I mean, it's pretty nuts how good an aggressive push like this can be. Realize this will only work if you scout that your opponent will not be aggressive early. And one of the number 1 things you're looking for is to make sure the expansion finishes, and when did that extractor get dropped? At what time was that extractor coming into play? If it comes in too early, you really have to worry about roach aggression, and you're probably not going to be able to start off with that level 1 upgrade quite so fast, and you will probably have to get some additional gateways before you even consider getting a Robo. TT1 was able to get that Robo, and then subsequently the gateways after, simply based on his scouting information. And it's funny because, you know, with my students and through lessons and just through talking to people send me emails, I respond to pretty much everything, any questions about the game or anything at all. People always ask me, well, what do I need to do to improve my gameplay? Well, once you have general mechanics down and you're comfortable with using hotkeys, constantly producing, scouting is one of the most important things in the game, because it's going to let you know precisely what you need to be doing. So here comes the push right now. Force fields, we know how strong they are. It's just really unbelievable what you can do with force fields, cutting off Zerglings from being able to get close to your unit. Something to notice here is we will be seeing a Baneling drop. Now, something you can do to prevent this from being completely devastating is to try to make sure you just have a nice spread on your units. Now, TT1 didn't do it that much. He did pull back his units a little bit, but if you can spread out your stalkers a tad bit, it will stop the splash damage from being as devastating. And what we're going to see here basically is just with the proxy pylon continuously warping in units. I mean, this is pretty all in. He's just being so aggressive, and he's dumping all of his resources and everything he has into this. But the great thing is that if you can drop 1 expansion, and as we can see here, Xlord does have a 3rd as well, then you will be in a phenomenal position. Something else to note too is that with that observer scout, that got sent out after the Robo had finished. He started building that observer, chrono boosted that out, and he sent it out and scouted the third, and that was when he made that decision to go for that all-in push. It doesn't necessarily have to be an all-in. You could cut back on the number of units, and if you decided, instead of going for the 7th gateway, maybe just get 6 gateways, and then go for that third expansion. But at this point, what had happened was TT1, with his observer scout from his relatively fast Robo after that Forge Fast expand, scouted the third, saw that, this is a tremendous opportunity. I will push out with my 7 gates. I've got the level 1 weapons and the level 1 armor finished. I can all in this, and it's reasonably sure that it will be a victory. But curb it to however you like, whatever your playstyle is. If you would like to do this type of opening and have this type of playstyle, but be a little more macro focused, then like I said, probably just go with the 6 gates instead of a total of 7 gates. Get a relatively decent army around, between the 8 and 10 minute mark, and then just use that to defend and move out to your third expansion. And that's a good decision as well. It's all based, again, off of scouting. So let's just go over the build order that was used by TT1 one more time here. The opening was set in stone with the 9 Pylon, 15 Forge, 17 Nexus, and 17 Cannon. Scouting out that late gas was when he decided, I'm going to go macro focused. And then we saw the 19 Gateway. 21 was double Assimilator here in the main. 27, the Cybernetics Core. 31, a third Assimilator at the fast expansion. At 41 is when we saw the level 1 upgrades, and that's also when the Cybernetics Core finished for that Warp Gate research to start. 48 supply, he went with Robo first because he was not expecting early aggression. If you expect early aggression and you want to still do this Forge Fast expand, instead of getting this Robo first, just start to get some gateways. I would suggest probably about 2 or 3 additional ones early game, and then once you have your expansion nice and saturated, you can go ahead and work your way up to 6 or 7. And then a 56 supply is actually when we saw TT1 drop those 6 additional gateways, scouting out that third quick expansion. He decided to push out with that 7 gate push. He had the level 1 weapons, the level 1 armor upgrade finished, and he all-ined it, and it obviously worked quite well for him. You can see even during the GG, taking a look here, while there are still some banelings, still strongly in favor of TT1, so even if X-Lord had stayed in, there really wasn't that much he could have done. He went for that third, he was amping up for that, and he wasn't really prepared for this push. So there you go, guys. Hopefully you enjoyed this video. Once more, sorry for it being a little bit late, just some things came up, and I wasn't able to get it out quite when I wanted to, but hopefully you enjoyed this. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, go ahead and leave them in the chat box below. I do read the comments typically, and although I may not answer every individual one, there's typically enough helpful people here in the Force Strategy Gaming community that you will get your questions answered one way or another, be it a troll or a legitimate answer. Either way, though, I guess you'll get an answer. So there you go, guys. Thank you so much for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed this video. As always, if you like the content, please subscribe to the channel. Keep watching and keep owning.